Hi, I'm Bill Church, Executive Editor of the Herald-Tribune, and thank you for joining us. Sunday, October the 4th, is the 90th anniversary of the Herald-Tribune, and I'm thrilled and honored to be here with a 40-year employee, our real estate editor, and truly one of the icons of this newspaper in the community, Harold Bubil.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you for not pointing out that I might have been here for the 90 years ago.
Well, I was going to go with that as the start, but we have a wonderful section, and Harold's got the lead story that will be in Sunday's newspaper on the 90th anniversary. Harold, take us back 40 years plus when you started. What was Sarasota like, and what was the Herald-Tribune like back then?
Well, Sarasota was just starting to become a high-rise city. It was pretty much of a low-rise. There were only there was Plymouth Harbor, and there were 4 condominiums along the bayfront, and that was it as far as high-rises. The Terrace building and the Orange Blossom. You know, it was a very low-rise city. So we knew there was a lot of change going on at that time, and that there was going to be a lot of change to come. And I realized that, and that's why I decided, hey, I can grow with this city. Maybe I'll stay. But we had a bona fide boom starting in the 1950s with the servicemen who had been stationed here during World War II coming back, starting businesses, raising families like my uncle did. That's what encouraged us to come down from Newport, Rhode Island. So it was a town that was just blossoming all over, but it still had that small town feel 40 years ago. And I actually moved here about 58 years ago.
So yeah. You started out in one role, and then when did you go into the area that you're known best for, which is real estate and architecture?
That was about 1994, so I guess 21 years ago that I became real estate editor. I had done a lot of different things here, and the wonderful thing about the Herald-Tribune is it's always allowed me and many other journalists the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And so I started out in sports, and I was a features section editor and religion editor and health editor. I started a health section. I've been a writer, editor, photographer, videographer, public speaker. You know, I get to do all these different things here in the community that I love. So it's always been a great opportunity.
Yeah, there's always a fascination with what goes on in the newsroom, and in 40 years you've seen it all. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen in terms of the change of the newsroom and how we deliver news.
Well, I think one of the biggest changes was there have been a lot of technological changes. When I started at the Herald-Tribune, we had linotype machines and hot type and compositors who worked in a union. A union is an organization of people who bargain for labor rights and pay and things like that. We don't have those in Florida anymore, but we did at that time. We had a real analog way of doing things. You know, we had the wire room with teletype machines, and you know, lots of clicking and going on, and it was just a very labor-intensive process to put out the newspaper. I think we had over 110 people in the composing room on both shifts. Wow. Now we don't have anybody. We don't have a composing room anymore. The composing room and the newsroom are basically the same thing because of technology today. So I worked on the first cold type section of the Herald-Tribune in 1978 when we went from setting type in lines of lead with a linotype machine to phototype setting with computers. And we've just followed that through to doing different sections electronically and then doing the whole paper electronically in a process called pagination. So it's been wild. I've always said if we were still doing the newspaper today, the way we were doing it in 1974, I would not be here. I would have been doing something else because it was really stressful and you had very little control over the final product. And today, the editors have almost complete control over it.
You've seen a lot of changes. In many ways, we would argue that the Herald-Tribune is much different than the industry that we report on quite a bit. What makes the newspaper in this community perhaps unique in its characteristics?
Well, we have a community that's very involved. There's a high level of community involvement, and people rely on the Herald-Tribune to be kind of like an informational hub for that. We also have our demographics are still newspaper readers. Of course, we made a big push into digital reporting of news online and on mobile devices, so we can give you the news however you want it, but we still have a lot of people who read the newspaper. They want the paper in their hands with their morning coffee. So, you know, it's great to be able to give them that option, but back to the question of, I think people feel an ownership over the Herald-Tribune, and every time, like if I'm out in public and people don't, maybe I meet somebody I don't know, I don't volunteer that I work for the Herald-Tribune unless it's pertinent. But if somebody else says, oh, Harold works at the Herald-Tribune, that person starts telling me about their experience with the Herald-Tribune. And so I just listen and say thank you for your readership. You know? People think that this is an institution, and it's a public trust, and it's a public institution. It's like we're responsible to our readership, and they expect us to honor that responsibility.
Well, Harold, on behalf of the Herald-Tribune, we thank you so much for your service. We know we've got at least another 10 years in front because you got to get to the 100th anniversary.
To the 100th anniversary, at which time I'm going to write a lot about the 1920s real estate boom, which is an endless source of fascination for a real estate geek like me. That's when Florida came into its own, and we've just been building on that ever since.
Harold Bubil, one of the icons of the Herald-Tribune. Please join us on Sunday, 40-page section. You will love the look back at some of the classic front pages, and also
some of those I remember, the classic front pages, yeah, from 40, 50, 60 years ago.
And anyway, thank you. Follow us again, HT Studio, and of course, look for us a special report on the 90th anniversary at heraldtribune.com. Thank you very much.